Hi, my name's Vicki Dawson.
And hi, I'm Lisa Artis, and we're here from the Sleep Charity in support of Snoozy's Sleep Support Month, which is here to educate and inform parents and new and experienced parents. And Vicky, would you like to explain a little bit more about the Sleep Charity and what we do?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start right from the beginning about why I set the Sleep Charity up. So I set the Sleep Charity up in 2012, and I set it up because I was once a chronically sleep deprived mum, and I found it really difficult to know where to go and get some sleep support, some sort of help and advice. And I guess I've been expecting sort of sleep deprivation, in the early years. You kind of think, yeah, when they're infants, that's like the norm. But the problem I had was it continued for many years after that. And actually, it makes you feel really isolated, I think, when you are tired. And all I seemed to hear all around me was everybody else had got these children that were sleeping really well. And it made me feel a bit of a failure as well, as a parent, as a mum. And I did try to go down like the routes of sort of health visitor, GP, and there just seemed to be no sleep support available. And it took some time until I was able to get a good night's sleep. I don't think I valued sleep, until I didn't have it in my life. You don't, do you? You just kind of take it a bit for granted. And what happened with me is I started to research sleep, so to try to look for reasons why the sleep issues might be occurring. And it was that route that sort of led me to what we call a behavioural approach to sleep. And once I'd identified what was causing the sleep issues, I could then put the strategies in place and stick to them, and sleep issues were resolved within a couple of weeks, which for me, it's just life-changing when you get sleep back into your life. So that was 6 long years of sleep deprivation that led me to set the charity up. And my real passion comes from the fact that there's not a great deal of sleep education around. So as parents, we might be taught about safe sleeping or get access to that kind of information. But in terms of when things go wrong with sleep, there was kind of nothing out there. So I wanted to try and help parents so that they didn't have to go down that same sort of route that I'd been down. And that's where it all started back in 2012. And we used to be called the Children's Sleep Charity. But we sort of changed and developed significantly as we've moved on over the years. And, we do all sorts of different things, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But it is really about getting that evidence-based support in place, because people don't know where to look for information. So a big part of what we try to do at the Sleep Charity is make sure that the information we provide is accessible, but also there's like evidence behind the information too. And I think sometimes parents get really concerned when they hear about sleep information, because they presume it's going to involve like cry it out methods or controlled crying, and that's not what this is about at all. So, we don't start to introduce sleep programs until children are 12 months old and above. And lots of work that we do with new parents is about normalising infant sleep patterns. Young babies are supposed to wake up in the night. That's where they're at biologically. So we offer lots of different types of support. It is a postcode lottery, unfortunately. So what parents can access depends on, where they are in the country, which is not right. And it's something that we campaign to try to address. So in certain parts of the country, we're able to offer one-to-one support. So we've got services, for example, at the moment in Doncaster, Bassetlaw, North Yorkshire. And through those services, we're able to put parents in touch with a sleep practitioner, and we do an assessment process, and then identify strategies that may be helpful. And I think it's really important to say it's very much around working in partnership with families. So finding out about parenting styles, some parents choose to co-sleep, and that's, absolutely fine as long as it's done safely. And it's not that we're about trying to stop those kind of things at all. It's about changes that families want to make, and we're there to give them the information about sleep and to empower them to make those changes if they so wish. So we provide lots of different resources, really. There's that one-to-one, there's sort of training that we deliver to practitioners too, because one of the things I never realised is that professionals often don't get any sleep training. So the people that I'd gone to ask for support and advice may not have had any training themselves about sleep. So it's a real neglected area. And we do research. We work with a number of different academic institutions, and there's so much more that we've got to learn about sleep, so many questions unanswered. But the good thing about the research is it's also shown that the way that we work is highly effective. So there's been a couple of research studies, and they've both shown that on average, children have gained an additional 2.4 hours sleep per night, which is like loads of sleep if you add it up over the week. It's a large increase. And we work on campaigning too. So we're trying to raise awareness about how important it is that families have sleep support. And it's trying to bring that to government attention, because there is no funding around this at the moment. Yet, if you don't get adequate sleep, it can have all sorts of knock-on effects, as I know only too well. And more recently, the charity sort of developed over time, and what I started to recognise is that we weren't just improving the children's sleep, we were improving parents' sleep as well, and we weren't actually capturing that. So we started to capture that with some data that we collected in a research study. And we looked at mental health, and there's a big link between mental health and sleep issues. And what we found is that we were able to improve mental health on every score that was measured of the parents and carers, which is like an incredible achievement. So we decided that we were going to try and expand, that we're going to move into adult sleep support as well. And we are a small charity, we are a small team, and what we need to do is work in partnerships. So we worked alongside Sleep Council, and that's where you came in, Lisa. Do you want to explain a little bit about Sleep Council and how we sort of joined together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually headed up a not-for-profit organisation called the Sleep Council. And I had worked with Vicky for several years on different projects, and the Sleep Council's remit was very much about creating sort of public awareness around the importance of a good night's sleep and how things like the bedroom environment played a part in that. And we focus primarily more around sort of adult sleep and working with corporate organisations. And the Sleep Council had undertaken some research and found that there was a need out there for like a go-to organisation that was really credible, and that could influence and have a greater reach. And for me, it sort of, having spoken with Vicky on numerous occasions, it felt right that we should actually join together. So that's what we did. We started working in partnership, and in July last year, we actually merged the two organisations together. So the Sleep Council brand now comes under the Sleep Charity, and I obviously transferred over in the process to join Vicky and the team at the Sleep Charity. But we didn't want to completely lose the Sleep Council name, because it had been out there in the public arena for 25 years. So it was quite a well-known name and had done quite a lot in generating sort of broadcast coverage and newspaper coverage. So what we have done is we've developed an advisory board called the Sleep Council, so we can keep that name. And this advisory board is made up of experts across lots of different specialisms really, but sort of still coming back to the subject of sleep. So we've got experts in paediatrics, but we've also got specialists in menopause, in sport, in sensory processing. And we anticipated that we would have this advisory group, that there would be about 8 members of this advisory group, but we were absolutely kind of inundated with requests. So we've got about 20 now who sit on this advisory group, which is amazing because we can break them down into little subcommittees as well. But it's really important for us now the charity is growing and expanding obviously into different areas, that all the work that we do continues to be evidence-based and high quality, and that's what our advisory board is there for. And now with the two sort of organisations joining together, we do have this bigger reach. We're doing a lot more campaigning, we're doing a lot more public awareness and consumer campaigns, which means that our messages are getting out further and wider.
Thanks. One of the questions I get asked a lot is about sort of funding, donations, and how the sleep charity sort of is run. And what I will say is there's not a great deal of money around sleep, so it's always a real challenge for us to keep going. I think I was really naive, when I set the charity up. I thought that it's a charity, people give you money, and you can do good with it. And actually, it's so much more complicated than that. So we are a registered charity, so you can look us up on the Charity Commission website, and you'll be able to find us there. And the way that we're funded is through different sort of streams. So if you'd have asked me this question 12 months ago, I would have said that most of our income comes through training people. So when I say people, it's usually NHS staff. So we train doctors, health visitors, occupational therapists to deliver our sleep intervention. But obviously the pandemic struck, and what that meant is that there was no more face-to-face training, and 80% of our income just disappeared overnight back in March. So we've had to be creative. We've had to develop different ways of working really quickly, but we managed to do it, and we've actually come out of it much stronger, I think, as a result. It didn't seem that way back in March when trying to figure out how we were going to sort of keep going. But we have developed e-learning platform now, and we can offer information to professionals through the e-learning platform. We've also been using Zoom to deliver live training sessions as well. And the positive about that is that we've actually had a much wider reach, rather than people having to come to us to receive the training or us having to travel. We've had international delegates. I think we've had some from Italy, Greece, all over. Yeah, it's been really interesting how we've extended that reach, and that's something that we're going to carry on doing as well. So about 20% of the income now comes from the training, and some of the income comes from delivering sleep services. So the NHS do commission us in certain areas, so that if a family lives in that area, they can access our support, they can access our information, our advice. But like I said earlier, that's very much a postcode lottery. And the vision that we've got is that every parent should be able to access that, no matter where they live in the country, because sleep is a fundamental need. We need it. It's as important as food and water. It's really important that you get that proper support. So in order to sort of address those areas where there isn't support, what we've done is develop training packages as well, so that we train up practitioners who can then go and filter out our training. So for example, we've got something called Sleep Tight, which is a parenting program around sleep. And we train family support workers to deliver that back in the localities. And we've got over 150 centres that are delivering that. And it gives us a reach of about 40,000 families a year, which is quite incredible, for a small charity like we are. Other funding, we apply for grants, so charitable funding. I'm sure you can imagine that, it's always tough to get that kind of funding, but at the moment, it's even more difficult because charities are being relied on more and more to deliver vital services. And sadly, you know, sleep support is not right up there amongst priorities. Quite often, grant makers think that this kind of thing is provided by the NHS, so they will not fund sleep support, which is, it's really difficult, it's really frustrating. But we've had some successes recently, and you know, we've did manage to get some funding, and we've developed a teen sleep hub for young people who've got sleep issues with that money. So whenever we get funding, we try to make sure that whatever we create through that is sustainable, so that once the funding's gone, there's something there that's left. That's really important. So that funding comes to an end in May, but the Teen Sleep Hub will still be there providing this information to young people. And, you know, they've never needed it more than right now during this pandemic. Donations, that's another area, and the amount of donations we get are tiny. So I think it's about 2% of our income is through donations, and we do work with corporates who do at times donate to us, and you know, every penny that we get is ploughed back into being able to employ staff, to be able to employ sleep practitioners, so that we can offer this support to as many people as possible. Because I just know how really difficult it is if you are sleep deprived. When Lisa came on board, she's got a background in marketing and being able to get messages out there. And that's a really important part of what we do, so that we can make sure people know about us. And she's done loads of work on the website. So do you want to just talk about that, Lisa?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the website, obviously everyone loves a good website, and we launched our new one in December after months of hard work collating lots of information, but it is absolutely jam-packed with information. And what we kind of hope is that, as Vicky's mentioned, you know, there are obviously funded sleep support services in certain areas where obviously parents can access this one-to-one support from sleep practitioners, but we want people to know that there is still sort of help at hand. Yes, it might not be obviously one-to-one support, but what we wanted to do with our website is to ensure that there was lots of information that parents could look at, they could download, they could print off, and start to kind of work their way through it. So we now have a dedicated children's section on the website. So under there's things about how to create a good bedtime routine. There's an advice sheet around diet and sleep. There's also relaxation ideas as well. And it just means that parents can start to have a little read through, maybe start to make some small changes themselves. And sometimes what we find is just some really simple changes can have such a positive impact on a children's sleeping pattern. So we would just encourage any parent to have a look at the website. You know, there are advice sheets that you can either download to your phone, or you can print out black and white versions if you prefer to kind of read a hard copy. And, you know, have a look through and see what there is. We also have a dedicated adult section as well. So as a parent, you know, if you're suffering with your own sleep, you know, because your child doesn't, which is invariably what happens, there is lots of really great advice there as well about how you can look at your bedroom environment, you know, again, how to create a good bedtime routine, and again, looking at things like really good sleep hygiene. So things you could do around maybe avoiding alcohol and caffeine, maybe any exercise that you could put into place that will help with your sleep as well. And so I would just say it's a really, really good resource, and we would encourage anybody to use it as it's a really good sort of first step, because obviously, as we mentioned, you know, we can't offer that one-to-one support across the country at the moment, which is something obviously we would like to do going forward. But you know, sleep is really important. And Vicky, do you want to just talk about sort of the importance of sleep and sort of the impact that it does kind of have on our daily lives? Obviously, you've talked, you know, at the beginning about how it impacted you, but if we could just explain a little bit more there.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about, Lisa, because when you are sleep deprived, you know, it does affect every sort of area of your life, and it also affects your capacity to parent. So actually to keep boundaries in place, to put routines in place, you know, it has a huge impact. And I think one of the things that I found, and parents that I speak to often report, is they feel just so isolated and lonely. And I remember looking at parenting forums, and it just seemed like everybody else was getting a really good night's sleep, and that every other child slept. And what I would say to parents listening is sleep problems are incredibly common. So you're not on your own. I mean, there's different sort of statistics and research around it, but some of it shows that up to 40% of youngsters will have a sleep issue. And I know that figure's like the same for adults as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of people in our society who aren't sleeping well, who aren't getting the amount of sleep that they need. And although I knew that I was tired, I didn't know or understand like the knock-on side effects of this. And what we do know is that sleep deprivation impacts on your mental health. So, you know, my GP told me I was depressed, and I probably was, but it was the sleep deprivation that was leading to the depression. And I was prescribed antidepressants, but that wasn't sorting the core problem out. So you may feel down, you may feel depressed. It can result in things like increased anxiety levels. And if you're anxious, that can pass on to your child. They can become anxious. Bedtime can become that dreaded time of the day, because you're just thinking, how long is it going to take tonight? You know, what's it going to bring when I get to sleep? When I'm going to be woken up again? And all those feelings of anxiety can actually make it even more difficult to sleep. And there's a real complex relationship, isn't there, between like mental health and sleep issues, but they're most certainly entwined. But it can affect things like your physical health as well. So, immune system's lower when you sleep deprived. So you can catch sort of viruses, bugs, things like that normally you'd be able to just shake off. There's a link between weight gain and sleep deprivation. And when you start to look at sort of research around it, it's quite a depressing read, because it can impact in so many ways. And certainly in terms of your daily functioning, so relationships, you're not at your most pleasant when you're sleep deprived. You're not at your most tolerant. And you can have all sorts of feelings around that, even sort of getting into areas around attachment with your child. And this isn't the life that you'd probably planned. I used to sort of sit and think, gosh, I thought we'd be, skipping through fields and having picnics. And actually, I can't even get out of the chair because I'm so exhausted to make a picnic. And those sorts of things are difficult to admit as well. And I remember thinking, how can I possibly tell all this to? Because it makes me sound as if, I don't want to be a mum. And that wasn't the case at all. I was just really struggling. Safety is another one. I mean, I remember I used to have to drive to work, and I used to have to drive down the M1, and I was just so exhausted. And actually, I shouldn't have been driving. It was really unsafe. And I know there's research that suggests that sleep deprivation, reaction times of sleep deprived drivers can be worse than somebody over the alcohol limit. I mean, that's really shocking. And I used to see a sign on the motorway that said, "Don't drive tired." And I was always tired. I've got to go to work. So what do you do? So it's it affects all areas of life. There's lots of road traffic accidents that are attributed to sleep deprivation. So it can actually have a knock-on effect, not just to your own family, but to other families. Massive cost to society in terms of things like days lost at work. It's just huge. But I like to kind of flip that round, because that sounds really depressing. And what I like to look at is what are the positives that getting good sleep can bring. So, the positives are it can bring improved mental health, improved relationships, improved physical health and well-being, improved concentration, improved memory. For youngsters, it can bring reduced hyperactivity. So lots of families will say, oh, my child doesn't sleep because, they're on the go all the time. They don't need sleep, that's quite often a sign of sleep deprivation. So we get calmer children, we get stronger family units, and we get bedtimes that we really look forward to. It becomes a lovely part of the day. So yeah, lots of sort of things about sleep deprivation and the impact it can have. And I guess that kind of brings us to a bit of a close into, because I could talk about sleep all day, and I know you could as well. And leads us into sort of the next chat that we're going to be having about how to safeguard your sleep. So we're going to be giving you some sort of more information about sleep deprivation and some positive strategies as well that you will be able to put into place.